In this lesson, we're going to talk about the role of education in society through the lens of new right sociological theories. So we have been looking at functionalist ideas of the role of education in society. We looked at the Marxists, we looked at the feminist understanding, and now we're going to talk about the new right and how they understand how education operates within society. And it should be noted that the new right conception of sociology in general places a lot of emphasis on the concept of individualism. On individualism. This is an idea that was sprung originally from classical liberalism. So classical liberalism, and has been evolved into what we would describe as neoliberalism today, and has been picked up by a lot of new right sociological theorists. And it ultimately means that we should have an individual choice, and the individual choice should inform a lot of our sociological beliefs. We should be informed by our ability to make individual choices and have a sense of individualism within society. And this finds its way into the realm of education and the role of education within society. So when it comes to the specifically the extent to which they accept state intervention, and state intervention in a lot of things, also specifically education. So when we talk about the new rights theory within sociology, we will be touching on the new rights and lots of theories relating to religion, crime and deviance, etc., and the extent to which the state intervenes, and the extent to which the new right would argue that state intervention is a moral and just system, is going to be informed by this concept of individualism, of how the individual should be able to make choices, and the individual should be able to choose different aspects of their own life, and the state shouldn't be able to intervene in that decision. And so that informs our understanding of education. So rather than some institutions that the state intervenes heavily in, the new right argue that the system of education should be run like a business, and coupling this with other theories of new right, things like the free market economics. So free market economics, we understand that the new right expects that the education system be run like a business and operate within a market system, within a structured market system. Because within this structured market system, within the system of private business as well, there is a sense of competition that exists. So every business that exists within a particular market, so whether that be consumer goods sales, technology, specific services, whatever business you're in, you have to compete with other businesses that also provide similar products for in your market, and you have to compete with them to attract consumers. The business that is the most successful in those markets are the ones that have the most consumers, and in doing so, we have to have a sense of competition. And the new right argues that a system of competition will challenge a business to try and improve their product, to improve their services more and more and more, to be able to compete with other businesses. So if you have if you're, for example, you operate in a service economy, so you provide a service, whatever that service may be, and you're not very good, your service isn't actually particularly isn't very good, then you're not going to attract as many consumers as somebody else within that market that has a better service. And so the new right argues that this could be applied to the education system, as that will challenge education institutions to improve as they compete with each other. And so they argue that from this logic, they argue that a system of state schools, so this would be an example of state intervention, they argue that this system of state intervention is problematic, because if you have a state-intervened system where the state controls the education system, then it would suggest that schools don't have to compete with each other to attract consumers, in this case the consumers being more and more students. And so this would mean that if you don't have to compete, then this can lead to poor standards because there's no competition. If there is state-funded schools, and there is only state-funded schools, then there could be poor standards because it wouldn't matter, because the students wouldn't be able to go anywhere else because they're all state-funded. And the new right argues that if there existed an education market whereby schools would have to compete with each other to attract new students, then the schools that want to succeed will have to improve their standards, because if they don't improve their standards, then they will lose out on more and more students. So they argue that the education system ought to be run in a sense of it being like a business operating within a free market, and so that we have an education market. This improves standards because of competition, because if you want to be a good school that attracts a lot of students or consumers, if we're going to be using the analogy with business, then we're going to have to improve our standards. We'll have to improve our education standards, improve the facilities within education, etc., etc., etc. And this is what the new right argues is the ways in which we can understand how education ought to exist within society.